The Kurds, also the Kurdish people, are an ethnic group in the Middle East, mostly inhabiting a contiguous area spanning adjacent parts of eastern and southeastern Turkey, western Iran, northern Iraq, and northern Syria. The Kurds are culturally and linguistically closely related to the Iranian peoples and, as a result, are often themselves classified as an Iranian people. Many Kurds consider themselves descended from the Medes, an ancient Iranian people, and even use a calendar dating from 612 BC, when the Assyrian capital of Nineveh was conquered by the Medes. The claimed Median descent is reflected in the words of the Kurdish national anthem, "We are the children of the Medes and Kai Khosrow." The Kurdish languages form a subgroup of the Northwestern Iranian languages. The Kurds are estimated to number, worldwide, around 30 to 32 million, possibly as many as 37 million, with the majority living in West Asia. However, there are significant Kurdish diaspora communities in the cities of western Turkey, in particular Istanbul. A recent Kurdish diaspora has also developed in western countries, primarily in Germany. The Kurds are the majority population in the autonomous region of Iraqi Kurdistan and in the autonomous region of Rojava, and are a significant minority group in the neighboring countries Turkey and Iran, where Kurdish nationalist movements continue to pursue greater autonomy and cultural rights. Language. The Kurdish language refers collectively to the related dialects spoken by the Kurds. It is mainly spoken in those parts of Iran, Iraq, Syria and Turkey which comprise Kurdistan. Kurdish holds official status in Iraq as a national language alongside Arabic, is recognized in Iran as a regional language, and in Armenia as a minority language. The Kurdish languages belong to the Northwestern subgroup of the Iranian languages, which in turn belongs to the Indo-Iranian branch of the Indo-European family. Most Kurds are either bilingual or multilingual, speaking the language of the respective nation of origin, such as Arabic, Persian, and Turkish is a second language alongside the native Kurdish, while those in diaspora communities often speak 3 or more languages. According to Mackenzie, there are few linguistic features that all Kurdish dialects have in common and that are not at the same time found in other Iranian languages. The Kurdish dialects, according to Mackenzie, are classified as Northern Group, Central Group, Southern Group including Kermanshahi, Ardelani and Laki. The Zaza and Gorani are ethnic Kurds, but the Zaza-Gorani languages are not classified as Kurdish. Commenting on the differences between the dialects of Kurdish, Crayon Browick clarifies that in some ways, Kermanji and Sorani are as different from each other as is English from German, giving the example that Kermanji has grammatical gender and case endings, but Sorani does not, and observing that referring to Sorani and Kermanji as dialects of one language is supported only by their common origin, and the fact that this usage reflects the sense of ethnic identity and unity of the Kurds population. The number of Kurds living in Southwest Asia is estimated at close to 30 million, with another 1 or 2 million living in diaspora. Kurds comprise anywhere from 18% to 20% of the population in Turkey, possibly as high as 25%, 15 to 20% in Iraq, 10% in Iran, and 9% in Syria. Kurds form regional majorities in all 4 of these countries, viz. in Turkish Kurdistan, Iraqi Kurdistan, Iranian Kurdistan and Syrian Kurdistan. The Kurds are the 4th largest ethnic group in West Asia after the Arabs, Persians, and Turks. The total number of Kurds in 1991 was placed at 22.5 million, with 48% of this number living in Turkey, 18% in Iraq, 24% in Iran, and 4% % in Syria. Recent emigration accounts for a population of close to 1.5 million in Western countries, about half of them in Germany. A special case of the Kurdish populations in the Transcaucasus and Central Asia, displaced there mostly in the time of the Russian Empire, who underwent independent developments for more than a century and have developed an ethnic identity in their own right. This group's population was estimated at close to 0.4 million in 1990. History. Antiquity. The land of Karda is mentioned on a Sumerian clay tablet dated to the 3rd millennium BC. This land was inhabited by the people of Su, who dwelt in the southern regions of Lake Van. The philological connection between Kurd and Karda is uncertain, but the relationship is considered possible. The term Kurd, however, is first encountered in Arabic sources of the 7th century. Books from the early Islamic era, including those containing legends like the Shahnameh and the Middle Persian Karnamagaya-Ashir-i-Pabagan and other early Islamic sources, provide early attestation of the name Kurd. The Kurds have ethnically diverse origins. During Sassanid era, in Karnamagaya-Ashir-i-Pabagan, a short prose work written in Middle Persian, Ardashir I is depicted as having battled the Kurds and the leader, Mada. After initially sustaining a heavy defeat, Ardashir I was successful in subjugating the Kurds. In a letter Ardashir I received from his foe, Ardavan V, which is also featured in the same work, he is referred to as being a Kurd himself. The usage of the term Kurd during this time period most likely was a social term, designating Northwestern Iranian nomads, rather than a concrete ethnic group. Similarly, in AD 360, the Sassanid king Shapur II marched into the Roman province Abdesine to conquer its chief city, Medes.The, present-day Syria. He found it heavily fortified and guarded by 3 legions and a large body of Kurdish archers. After a long and hard-fought siege, Shapur II breached the walls, conquered the city and massacred all its defenders. Thereafter, he had the strategically located city repaired, provisioned and garrisoned with his best troops. There is also a 7th century text by an unidentified author, written about the legendary Christian martyr Markadar. He lived in the 4th century, during the reign of Shapur II, and during his travels is said to have encountered Mar Abdasho, a deacon and martyr, who, after having been questioned of his origins by Markadar and his Marzobans, stated that his parents were originally from an Assyrian village called Hazar, but were driven out and subsequently settled in Tamanan, a village in the land of the Kurds, identified as being in the region of Mount Judi. Medieval period. In the early Middle Ages, the Kurds sporadically appear in Arabic sources, though the term was still not being used for a specific people. Instead, it referred to an amalgam of nomadic Western Iranic tribes, who were distinct from Persians. However, in the High Middle Ages, the Kurdish ethnic identity gradually materialized, as one can find clear evidence of the Kurdish ethnic identity and solidarity in texts of the 12th and 13th century, though the term was also still being used in the social sense. Al-Tabari wrote that in 639, Hormuzan, a Sasanian general originating from a noble family, battled against the Islamic invaders in Khuzestan, and called upon the Kurds to aid him in battle. However, they were defeated and brought under Islamic rule. In 838, a Kurdish leader based in Mosul, named Mir Jafar, revolted against the Caliph al-Mutasim, who sent the commander Atak to combat him. Atak won this war and executed many of the Kurds. Eventually, Arabs conquered the Kurdish regions and gradually converted the majority of Kurds to Islam, often incorporating them into the military. such as the Hamdanids, whose dynastic family members also frequently intermarried with Kurds. In 934 the Daylamite dynasty was founded, and subsequently conquered most of present-day Iran and Iraq. During the time of rule of this dynasty, Kurdish chief and ruler Badr ibn Hassan I established himself as one of the most important emirs of the time. In the 10th–12th centuries, a number of Kurdish principalities and dynasties were founded, ruling Kurdistan and neighboring areas. The Shaddadids ruled parts of present-day Armenia and Aran. The Rawidid ruled Azerbaijan. The Hassanids ruled western Iran and upper Mesopotamia. The Marwanids ruled eastern Anatolia. The Anizids ruled western Iran and upper Mesopotamia. The Kakaids ruled Isfahan, Yazd and Abaku. The Hazaraspids ruled southwestern Iran. The Ayyubids ruled parts of southeastern Anatolia, the Arabian Peninsula and North Africa. Due to the Turkish invasion of Anatolia, the 11th-century Kurdish dynasties crumbled and became incorporated into the Seljuk dynasty. Kurds would hereafter be used in great numbers in the armies of the Zengids. Succeeding the Zengids, the Kurdish Ayyubids established themselves in 1171, first under the leadership of Saladin. Saladin led the Muslims to recapture the city of Jerusalem from the Crusaders at the Battle of Hattin, also frequently clashing with the Hashashins. The Ayyubid dynasty lasted until 1341, when the Ayyubid Sultanate fell to Mongolian invasions. Safavid period. The Safavid dynasty, established in 1501, also established its rule over Kurdish inhabited territories. The paternal line of this family actually had Kurdish roots, tracing back to Firoz Shah Zarankola, a dignitary who moved from Kurdistan to Ardabil in the 11th century. The Battle of Chaldiran in 1514, that culminated in what is nowadays Iran's West Azerbaijan province, marked the start of frequent warfare between the Iranian Safavids and the neighboring rivaling Ottomans. By this war, many of the Kurds would be, as well as in the coming centuries to come, relatively frequently be passed on between the former and latter as they conquered the lost territories. Even though many of the Kurds remained under Safavid rule till its fall, the Kurds would revolt several times against the rulers. Safavid King Ismail I put down a Yazidi rebellion which went on from 1506 to 1510. A century later, the year-long Battle of Dimdim took place, wherein King Abbas I succeeded in putting down the rebellion led by Emir Khan Lebziran. Thereafter, a large number of Kurds was deported to Khorasan, not only to weaken the Kurds, but also to protect the eastern border from invading Afghan and Turkmen tribes. Forced movements and deportations on behalf of various geopolitical and policy-related interests were also used by Abbas I and other Safavid rulers, most notably against other ethnic groups within his vast empire, such as the Armenians, Georgians, and Circassians, who were also moved en masse from and to other districts in his empire. Kurds were found in great numbers at the slave markets of Khiva and Bukhara, being sold by the Turkmen. The Kurds of Khorasan, numbering around 700,000, still use the Kermanji Kurdish dialect. Zand period. After the fall of the Safavids, Iran was under the control of the Afsharid Empire ruled by Nader Shah at its peak. After Nader's death, Iran fell into a civil war, with multiple leaders trying to gain control over the country. Ultimately, it was Karim Khan, a lackey general of the Zand tribe, who would come to power. the country would flourish during Karim Khan's reign. A strong resurgence of the arts would take place, and international ties were strengthened. Karim Khan was portrayed as being a ruler who truly cared about his subjects, thereby gaining the title Vakali Raaya. Though not as powerful in its geopolitical and military reach as the predecessing Safavids and Afsharids or even the early Qajars. Even despite that, he managed to reassert Iranian hegemony over several of its integral territories in the Caucasus, comprising parts of modern-day Azerbaijan. In Ottoman Iraq, following the Ottoman-Persian War, he managed to seize Basra for several years. After Karim Khan's death, the dynasty would decline in favor of the riving Qajars due to infighting between the Khan's incompetent offspring. It wasn't until Lotf Ali Khan, 10 years later, that the dynasty would once again be led by an adept ruler. By this time, however, the Qajars had already progressed greatly, having taken a number of Zan territories. Lotf Ali Khan made multiple successes before ultimately succumbing to the rivaling faction. Iran and all its Kurdish territories would hereby be incorporated in the Qajar dynasty. The Kurdish tribes present in Balochistan and some of those in Fars are believed to be remnants of those that assisted and accompanied Lotf Ali Khan and Karim Khan, respectively. Ottoman period, when Sultan Selim I, after defeating Shah Ismail I in 1514, annexed Western Armenia and Kurdistan. He entrusted the organization of the conquered territories to Idris, the historian, who was a Kurd of Bitlis. He divided the territory into Sanjaksa districts, and, making no attempt to interfere with the principle of heredity, installed the local chiefs as governors. He also resettled the rich pastoral country between Erzurum and Yerevan, which had lain in waste since the passage of Timur, with Kurds from the Hakkari and Botan districts. For the next centuries, from the Peace of Amasya until the first half of the 19th century, several regions of the wide Kurdish homelands would be contested as well between the Ottomans and the neighboring rivaling successive Iranian dynasties in the frequent Ottoman-Persian wars. The Ottoman centralist policies in the beginning of the 19th century aimed to remove power from the principalities and localities, which directly affected the Kurdish emirs. Bediran Bey was the last emir of the Cizre-Botan Emirate after initiating an uprising in 1847 against the Ottomans to protect the current structures of the Kurdish principalities. Although his uprising is not classified as a nationalist one, his children played significant roles in the emergence and the development of Kurdish nationalism through the next century. The first modern Kurdish nationalist movement emerged in 1880 with an uprising led by a Kurdish landowner and head of the powerful Shamdinan family, Sheikh Ubaydullah, who demanded political autonomy or outright independence for Kurds, as well as the recognition of a Kurdistan state without interference from Turkish or Persian authorities. The uprising against Qajar Persia and the Ottoman Empire was ultimately suppressed by the Ottomans, and Ubaydullah, along with other notables, were exiled to Istanbul. 20th-century Kurdish nationalism emerged after World War I, with the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire, which had historically successfully integrated the Kurds, through use of forced repression of Kurdish movements to gain independence. Revolts did occur sporadically, but only in 1880, with the uprising led by Sheikh Ubaydullah did the Kurds as an ethnic group a nation make demands. Ottoman Sultan Abdul Hamid responded with a campaign of integration by co-opting prominent Kurdish opponents to strengthen Ottoman power with offers of prestigious positions in his government. This strategy appears to have been successful given the loyalty displayed by the Kurdish Hamidiyya regiments during World War I. The Kurdish ethno-nationalist movement that emerged following World War I and the end of the Ottoman Empire was largely largely a reaction to the changes taking place in mainstream Turkey, primarily to the radical secularization which the strongly Muslim Kurds abhorred, to the centralization of authority, which threatened the power of local chieftains and Kurdish autonomy, and to rampant Turkish nationalism in the new Turkish Republic, which obviously threatened to marginalize them. Jacob Kunzler, head of a missionary hospital in Urfa, has documented the large-scale ethnic cleansing of both Armenians and Kurds by the Young Turks. He has given a detailed account of the deportation of Kurds from Erzurum and Bitlis in the winter of 1916. The Kurds were perceived to be subversive elements that would take the Russian side in the war. In order to eliminate this threat, Young Turks embarked on a large-scale deportation of Kurds from the regions of Diyarbakir, Palu, Mush, Erzurum and Bitlis. Around 300,000 Kurds were forced to move southwards to Urfa and then westwards to Aintab and Marash. In the summer of 1917, Kurds were moved to Konya in central Anatolia. Through these measures, the Young Turk leaders aimed at weakening the political influence of the Kurds by deporting them from their ancestral lands and by dispersing them in small pockets of exiled communities. By the end of World War I, up to 700,000 Kurds had been forcibly deported and almost half of the displaced perished. Some of the Kurdish groups sought self-determination and the confirmation of Kurdish autonomy in the Treaty of Chevreuse. But in the aftermath of World War I, Kemal Ataturk prevented such a result. Kurds backed by the United Kingdom declared independence in 1927 and established the Republic of Ararat. Turkey suppressed Kurdist revolts in 1925, 1930, and 1937–1938, while Iran in the 1920s suppressed Simko Shikakutle Khmer and Jafar Sultan of the Hiraman region, who controlled the region between Marivan and north of Halabja. A short-lived Soviet-sponsored Kurdish Republic of Mahabad in Iran did not long outlast World War II. From 1922 to 1924 in Iraq a Kingdom of Kurdistan existed. When Ba'athist administrators thwarted Kurdish nationalist ambitions in Iraq, war broke out in the 1960s. In 1970 the Kurds rejected limited territorial self-rule within Iraq, demanding larger areas including the oil-rich Kirkuk region. During the 1920s and 1930s, several large-scale Kurdish revolts took place in Kurdistan. Following these rebellions, the area of Turkish Kurdistan was put under martial law and a large number of the Kurds were displaced. The Turkish government also encouraged resettlement of Albanians from Kosovo and Assyrians in the region to change the makeup of the population. These events and measures led to a long-lasting mutual distrust between Ankara and the Kurds. During the relatively open government of the 1950s, Kurds gained political office and started working within the framework of the Turkish Republic to further their interests. But this move towards integration was halted with the 1960 Turkish coup d'etat. The 1970s saw an evolution in Kurdish nationalism as Marxist political thought influenced some in the new generation of Kurdish nationalists opposed to the local feudal authorities who had been a traditional source of opposition to authority. Eventually they would form the militant separatist organization PKK, also known as the Kurdistan Workers' Party in English. The Kurdistan Workers' Party later abandoned Marxism-Leninism Kurds are often regarded as the largest ethnic group without a state, although larger stateless nations exist. Such periphrasis is rejected by some researchers such as Martin van Bruinessen and some other scholars who are usually close to Turkish authorities, who believe that such claims obscure Kurdish cultural, social, political and ideological heterogeneity without sufficient justification. Michael Radu, who had worked for the United States' Pennsylvania Foreign Policy Research Institute, argued that such claims mostly come from Kurdish nationalists, Western human rights activists, and European leftists. The exact origins of the name Kurd are unclear. The underlying toponym is recorded in Assyrian as Kadu and in Middle Bronze Age Sumerian as Kardar. Assyrian Kadu refers to an area in the upper Tigris basin, and it is presumably reflected in corrupted form in Arabic Gudi, readopted in Kurdish as Kudi. The name would be continued as the first element in the toponym Corduene, mentioned by Xenophon as the tribe who opposed the retreat of the 10,000 through the mountains north of Mesopotamia in the 4th century BC. There are, however, dissenting views, which do not derive the name of the Kurds from Kadu and Corduene but opt for derivation from Taysheyi instead. Regardless of its possible roots in ancient toponymy, the ethnonym Kurd might be derived from a term kwrt used in Middle Persian as a common noun to refer to nomads or tent dwellers, which could be applied as an attribute to any Iranian group with such a lifestyle. The term gained the characteristic of an ethnonym following the Muslim conquest of Persia, as it was adopted into Arabic and gradually became associated with an amalgamation of Iranian and Iranicized tribes and groups in the region. It is also hypothesized that Kurd could derive from the Persian word Gord, because the Arabic script lacks a symbol corresponding uniquely to G. Sherif Zan Bidlisi in the 16th century states that there are 4 divisions of Kurds: Kermanj, Lur, Kalor and Guran, each of which speak a different dialect or language variation. Paul notes that the 16th century usage of the term Kurd is recorded by Bidlisi, regardless of linguistic grouping. Medes still reflect an incipient Northwestern Iranian Kurdish ethnic identity uniting the Kermanj, Kalhur and Guran.